We are pleased to have back here in studio a man that you watch every single Sunday on Fox, as well as seeing him inside of Canton in bus form. He is Pro Football Hall of Famer Howie Long. Good to see you, Howie.
Good to see you. You did a great job in Canton.
Thank you.
Really, at the Civic Center dinner, which is
I appreciate that.
for the city, for the Hall of Fame. It's a major deal, and it's a tough ask, and you did a great job.
I really appreciate that. That really makes my day because I love that. That jacket ceremony to me is
pretty cool.
Well, it's not pretty cool. I think it's kind of replacing Saturday as the most emotional event at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That the guys, when they get their jackets, as opposed to making speeches, is when they're realizing it first, and they don't have the nervousness of having to deliver a speech. All they got to do is just put one arm in a sleeve another arm in a sleeve.
The speech is a bear. It really is, because you're being asked to, one, you have to choose who your presenter is, and your presenter should be, in terms of football.
Who was yours?
My defensive line coach, Earl Leggett, who he's Michael Strahan's defensive line coach, and we both joke all the time. Michael has 14 jobs, and he does everything, and that's great. I love him, and he's fabulous at it. But we laughed that with no Earl Leggett, there's no Howie Long and there's no Michael Strahan. So it should be the person that's most responsible for you being there. And it was even the event was even longer, and they've tried to taper it down. Yeah. The presenters would give sometimes 10, 15-minute speeches.
Well, I remember Steve Young's dad, Grit, got up there.
That's a great name, Grit.
Grit Young.
And I want to be Grit.
Yeah, Grit Long. Grit Young got up there, and his speech was longer than the one that Steve gave after his. Yeah. Because Grit went over every single slight that his son had received throughout his whole career, where he was told he could not do it.
And as an inductee, you want to, you're going in, but, all the friends, all the teammates that you've played with, all the coaches that you've played under, the fans, the high school teacher, anyone that's impacted your life, you don't want to leave anyone out, and it's a daunting task.
And one of the many things I love about the Hall of Fame is that it's a completely random mix of people with whom you get inducted. Yeah. And you got inducted with who? Who was in your class?
Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Dan Rooney, and Dave Wilcox, who we've remained. Ronnie and I came out the same year, and Ronnie was extremely nice to me when I was coming out of Villanova, and I was the kid in the corner nobody talked to at what was then a kind of an abbreviated combine in Tampa Bay. I mean, they asked you how you felt, and they went like this, how do you feel? Good. There was no x-rays, no 40-yard dash, that kind of thing. And Joe, who I had competed against for a number of years, and Dave Wilcox and his family and our family have remained really close friends. And the group that, for example, that would end this year, that group will always have a special relationship.
Because
they went in together. It's the class of 2017.
So you and Dave Wilcox really had no relationship before that weekend?
No, you know what? I'm not I should be more of a historian of the game, but I grew up playing hockey. I grew up in Boston, and my dream was to play in the NHL and be Bobby Orr. So in many ways, my career's been a disappointment.
I love that.
But, I didn't know Dave Wilcox. Dave Wilcox was a big, bad man who played for the San Francisco 49ers and was one of the few players from that era who might have been able to translate to today's game. Like corners translate well, wide receivers, quarterbacks, they translate well. But for example, let's say Joe Green was 268 playing on the nose. That guy's 340 now.
Yeah. And
think about that. Terry's offensive line was 251 across the board. The biggest offensive line in the league averaged 323. So if you're not giving in to the realization that today's game is bigger, stronger, and faster from my perspective, because I know I live it in my house. I see Kyle walks in the kitchen in boxer shorts or Chris walks in and you go, God, I didn't look like that. It's a rough house.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned Mean Joe Green because I saw him at the hall.
He's the best.
But it's his teammate Mel Blount looks like he could give you some snaps. Now, when you talk about size,
scary,
and strength,
cowboy hat, got the boots on.
Oh my gosh!
Mel Blount walks in, you go, who's the linebacker? Yeah. But you have to remember there was no 5-yard. It was true bump and run and maul you down the field. Willie Brown, Mel Blount, they were corners like that. In today's game, you can't do that. So I'm not.
Well, they changed the rules for him.
Yeah, they changed the rules because of it.
And you believe it when you see him. I mean, like he is the real deal. I'm here with Howie. I
say that all the time, and Hall of Famers say that to each other. Man, look at Mel.
Do they really?
Oh God, yeah. Look at Mel.
Howie Long here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. You mentioned Kyle and Chris. Kyle got kicked out of practice recently because he couldn't keep his hands to himself.
Yesterday. Yeah, and
what do you think of that?
Yeah, he's got to get it under control. It's one of those things where, you're coming back from injury and you're switching positions and, maybe you're not where you want to be right now. He's getting his first live action since the surgery. And, I've seen it up close and personal in our own house. It's,
nice.
When it got to the point where it's, you start hitting 290, 310, 320, I need 10 minutes to stretch at a minimum.
Every day.
To break it up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if it happens quick, we're in trouble because I could fall apart right there. I'm a Humpty Dumpty right on the floor.
With these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Chris is in Philly now.
Yeah. Gonna go see him today.
How about that? He's in the city of brotherly love where
Diane and I both went to school at Villanova and have so many really close friends, and we're excited about that for him. And he's, I think he's enjoying it right now.
And last we spoke, it was before the Super Bowl, where you were kind of a nervous wreck, and then,
it was. You and I have been doing this a long time. I've been doing it 23 years. Hard to believe at Fox in the studio, and it was the first time in 23 years I've struggled to be present. I was fine when we had our downtown location, but as soon as we walked into the stadium, it hit me. And I was present there, but I wasn't. It was the first time in 23 years I've done, covered games where the kids have played. And Chris had, narrowed it down to 3-4 teams, and he loved Atlanta, and he loved the head coach down there, and made the decision to go to New England. And I kind of pushed him a little bit towards New England. And here it was in the third quarter, I got 28-3 or something like that. And I can't help him with his biology, his chemistry. But the one thing that I would hope I could help him with was his football. And here I had pushed him away from Atlanta to New England, and they're getting blown out in the Super Bowl. And I felt like the worst dad in the world. And the swing emotionally in the second half, it was a rainbow of emotions. And I must have said, oh my God, standing by myself in the end zone 30 times in the second half leading into the overtime. We'll never see a game like that again in the Super Bowl.
I agree. Yeah. We will not see another game like that. 28-3, and then the final score being an overtime win.
Run the ball. Run the ball. I still to this day thank you for not running the ball.
Well, I mean, Seattle Seahawks fans are listening to you say that, saying amen for their Super Bowl loss to the New England Patriots.
Yeah, they looked pretty good yesterday.
Yeah, they did. They sure did.
When they're right mentally and physically, Seattle's a pretty special group.
I want to take a break and come back and ask you about the 2017 NFL season. But before we do, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Charlottesville. And your son, Chris in particular, put some comments on Twitter that both Kyle and Chris put out some comments that were very moving to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, since Charlottesville is their hometown and you raised your kids there, what did you think about what we saw over the weekend?
I was shocked and horrified. You have to understand Charlottesville. Charlottesville, when we left LA, we wanted to find a place to raise the boys and looked all across the country. And this is pre kind of, access to the internet and Chamber of Commerce, temperature, kind of people that are in the community. And it is as fine a place to live with as caring and giving a group of people as you could find. And for that kind of hate, and that's what it is, it's hate. And if that kind of divisiveness to be present in your town and for people to be injured, one young lady, 32-year-old woman lost her life. And I think that's the age of our oldest son, Chris. And it's just horrible.
It is horrible because, you know, I mean, my uncle fought in World War II. We all know people who fought in World War II, and we thought that this fight against Nazism and hatred and white supremacy was complete on that front. And now Charlottesville, in a way, is that name will be associated with it.
Well, in a different way, having grown up in Boston and went through the busing riots in Boston in high school when there was desegregation, and that was a really, really disturbing time. And then out here in LA towards the end of my career, had the riots out here, the Rodney King riots, and went through that. And I thought, you know, Charlottesville is as far away from all of that as you can get. And for that to happen there is a stark reminder that, you know, there are still elements out there.
Well, you raised your kids right, man. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, they got a good mama. Yeah, I try, but, you know.
You know, you guys, the two of you together, good people, and that's why I'm always thrilled to have you here on the show in many, many other ways. Let's take a break. We're back in 60 seconds with Pro Football Hall of Famer Howie Long. We'll hit the 2017 football season. That's coming up next. Okay, welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. We've got David Shaw of Stanford, Dabo Swinney of Clemson still to call in, and Fred Dreyer is coming by the studio, Howie Long.
Cool. He's a cool guy.
Hunter.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, and, you know,
you think about it, athletes have made the transition.
Yeah.
You know, a gazillion years ago, this is a guy who, you know, made the transition, owned property, you know, production rights, et cetera, et cetera.
Fred, yeah.
Smart guy.
Yeah. Playing here in the Los Angeles Rams.
I think all the defensive ends are
nice.
Extraordinarily good.
I like it. Now, you're out here in Los Angeles because Fox just had its annual seminar in advance of the National Football League season.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Uh-huh.
Anytime, you know, you've got Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira doing rules, and it's, you know, rules in the NFL, it's like the budget for 2017.
Yeah.
You ever seen that on
it's like 3 feet tall.
Pick your chair, it's like 3 feet tall. That's what it is. And for them to break it down in simplistic terms that we can all understand is great. But for me, the highlight of the seminar was David Hill, our kind of founder and architect of Fox Sports. And
you just got the Roselle Award. At the
just got the Roselle Award, as a matter of fact, and you did a fabulous job again there.
Thanks
and
again.
he mentioned that to me too. And he and Jerry Jones sat down on stage and did a kind of just a conversation. And about halfway through it, they called Jimmy up, and Jimmy and Jerry sat there and told stories. And, you know, that's a fascinating relationship and a fascinating time in our league's history.
This happened at your symposium yesterday?
Hey, Rich, I'm telling you, it was as good a 30 minutes of conversation as I've ever witnessed in sports. It was so much fun. And those guys need to, you know, there needs to be a kind of a thawing of, you know, and I think there is. I think a lot of it's blown out of proportion, but I think it's important for them to, you know, understand the significance of the impact they had on the history of the NFL, and for them to not enjoy that and relish that as two partners, because that's really what they were in it. And Jimmy, in my mind, and I think all of the Cowboys' minds, belongs in the Ring of Honor down there, and I'm hopeful that happens.
And that's the first step, and then there's Canton. I mean, Jimmy Johnson has a resume for Canton. There's no question about that. And I know the reason why he was in Canton this year is because he presented Jason Taylor. And if it wasn't for the parting of the ways between Jimmy and Jerry, he might not have ever had that relationship with Jason Taylor, and so many other relationships that he holds near and dear. That said, a part of me thinks Jimmy might think if he had that third ring, if he had the third ring that Switzer got, he would already be in the Hall of Fame right now.
I'm not sure that he's probably worked that through. He might have worked that through in his head. I'm not sure. We don't really, because Jimmy doesn't want to talk about it, and I respect that. are we advocates of Jimmy going into the Hall of Fame? For sure. Terry is, Michael, and we have a great group, and we're fortunate like you do, and you want the best for them. And certainly you had a parade of
we did this year with TD and LT and Kurt. Yeah.
And TD's such a nice guy.
He is. I love those guys, and you have love for your on-air mates in the same way that we do, and that's what makes good TV and special. At this symposium, did you leave a seat for Cutler, like sort of the way that Jerry Glanville leaves tickets for Elvis?
They did a really funny video, and hey, listen, the perfect situation came up. He had his best season, I think, of his career a couple of years ago under Adam Gase in Chicago, and they're friends. I think Adam Gase went to his retirement party, and I think he viewed it as one more opportunity to maybe change people's perspective, and maybe I'm putting too much into the value of that, and just him wanting to go out with a bang.
It's interesting. If this was anybody else, like if this was Favre, right? We'd be like, man, he loves the game. He loves the game. He can't quit the game. With Cutler, it's like, that's a $10 million paycheck he's doing this for. That people do not believe that he loves the game to the point where he can't quit it. And yet that may just be the underlying issue.
What's that saying? He's an enigma wrapped in a riddle?
Yeah.
I mean, Jay is that. I mean, I've seen the other side of Jay. My son Kyle played with Jay and loves Jay. I told Kyle, because remember that it's kind of funny, and Jay, to give you kind of, there's more than there is on the surface with Jay than people think. And, he has a personality. He's actually a funny guy, but he's not, Eli Manning, Troy Aikman, not demonstrative, rah-rah, jump up and down guys, but, led in their own way. And Eli still leads. But because I remember that one famous game on like a Thursday night or a Monday night where he was on the sideline and he grabbed one of his offensive linemen by the neck, Jay Cutler, and this is before Kyle got there. And the primitive side of me came back for a minute. He was drafted in Chicago, and I just said to him, look, quarterback can yell at you. That's fine. That's within his rights. I've heard it. I've seen it. That's fine. He puts his hands on you. I don't care if it's Monday night football, Sunday night football, Tuesday night football, you choke him. And unbeknownst to me, he told Jay. And then they were playing, I think, the Jets on Monday night, and Kyle was getting into a skirmish with a couple of their defensive tackles after the play, and Jay grabbed him from behind, and Jay made a point of coming up to me in the tunnel and saying, hey, Mr. Long. I'm like, Mr. Long? Hey, Mr. Long, by the way, I wanted you to know I was just trying to help Kyle out when I grabbed him. I wasn't grabbing him by the collar. And at the time, I didn't think it through, but, what he was really saying was, I know you told your son to choke me.
Hey, look, everybody who's come across Cutler in person and outside of a locker room thinks he's an A+ individual, and we'll just see how he does in Miami. Unfortunately for him,
I was looking forward to seeing what was going to happen on Fox, because I think I think people were going to be surprised at what Jay was going to bring to the table.
Sure, and I agree with you there. And I look forward to Romo doing the games on CBS. I've got Howie Long here, so I want to hit some of these issues for the 2017 season. Jerry Jones has been described as furious as to what's gone down with Ezekiel Elliott, and you just saw him as you just mentioned at the symposium. Did he let any thoughts loose?
Didn't hear anything, and he wasn't asked, and it wasn't. Okay. I don't think that was on the agenda. It was more of a conversation of Fox Sports starting in 1994 with a pad of paper, and we were Fox Sports, and we had nobody. And so he didn't talk about it. I don't have, and I'm not sure what you're privy to. I don't have all the facts on what led the league to, levy the 6-game suspension. I do know this, and Roger also spoke at our seminar, and I think, and it's been the league's policy with something like that in a suspension, unless there's new evidence that comes in, whether you agree or disagree, I don't see it being shortened.
So if it's 6 games, how do you think this affects the Dallas Cowboys season here?
This is and this is the thing that I think this young man needs to realize, and I'm sure TD talked about it he's a generational back. You know, you can't say that about a lot of players. You know, he's a generational player. He really is. And that offense, that defense, everything benefits from that guy. Now, the offensive line is great, and they've got really capable backs backing him up. And I think they'll be fine. Will the quarterback be asked to do more as a byproduct? Will they be in more 2nd and 8, 3rd and 10? If they are, then the quarterback's going to be asked to do more.
Well, I hope they don't. Hopefully they look. Darren McFadden's no slouch.
No,
and nor is Alfred Morris.
No,
he knows. And Alfred Morris,
that offensive line is
the strength.
Let me tell you something. Is as advertised.
Yeah, that's the strength.
Yeah.
So just ride them, and make.
Well, yeah, but you know you're going to get the. It's going to look like a punt block. You know, I mean, it's going to be 8-9 in the box.
Nice. Yeah.
I
see.
Yeah.
So, who do you think wins the NFC then? Who do you think you will be visiting?
Eagles.
Nice.
Yeah.
Outside of a team that Chris is on, I mean, who do you think wins this conference that Fox covers?
Boy, oh boy. You know, I think the Giants are going to make a move. I think Atlanta's going to be there. I think Atlanta learned a lot of lessons in the Super Bowl. And the question is, can you come back from that psychologically? I mean, you look at Seattle, that loss on the goal line coming that close. San Francisco, that loss on the goal line coming that close. Those teams couldn't really recover from that. Can they recover from that? I would say Carolina is in position from just from a personnel standpoint. Cam has a lot of weapons down there. And if he's healthy and he's going again and that run game's going again, I think they're going to be a real threat. Green Bay's going to be right there. You look at the quarterbacks. It really comes back to the quarterbacks, as much as that pains me to say.
Well, I think it just shows that, you know, because Seattle's in the mix too. You said in the last segment that you really like what they're doing, and that locker room appears to be ready to maybe.
They thrive on, you know, they're a very unique place. I'm fascinated by Seattle's culture. I'm fascinated by that defense. Michael Bennett is one of my favorite players. Richard Sherman is one of my favorite players. Cam Chancellor is. Have you seen? You walked up on Cam.
You called him once a couple of Super Bowls ago a card-carrying
bad man.
That's what you called him.
He really, really is. I mean, he is like someone from my. You know, you think about the guys that came out in '81. With me, I think it was Ronnie Lott, Mike Singletary, Lawrence Taylor, Ricky Jackson, Smith, safety up in Denver, Kenny Easley, Ronnie Lott. That was '81. Now, those guys that were playing back there would light you up. Cam Chancellor is a bigger version of all of those guys.
And that's the NFC. Before I let you go, I do want to touch base on the Raiders and how they appear poised as well. I think they've got the best chance to make sure Tom Brady gets on an airplane for the right to play in the Super Bowl this year.
I really like their balance. They've got to get their left tackle in camp, and I think that'll end up happening. The running game it's really the foundation of what they do. And, you know, this kid at quarterback, I'm excited for him to take yet another step. And Cooper, and you know, it's a great group. And the additions they made, not only on offense, but they made some additions in the interior of the defensive line through the draft that are going to be really exciting to help Khalil Mack, because Khalil Mack is as good.
He's generational as well.
He is a generational player. And you don't, Rich, we throw that around too much, but Khalil Mack is.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Our poll question today is, what would you...
Boxers. I wear boxers.
Nice. No, that's not it.
That wasn't it.
That wasn't it. Del Tufo. Del Tufo is not.
Don't trust anybody named Del Tufo.
Exactly.
From Jersey.
The poll question today is: what would you rather win, a Super Bowl trophy or an Oscar or an Emmy, in honor of you, Mr. Broken Arrow, being here, and Fred Dreyer,
I have to say this. We touched on the Super Bowl earlier with Chris. I thought winning a Super Bowl was great. And it was. And I thought getting in the Hall of Fame was great. To watch your son win a Super Bowl, I'll take that over all of that. It was, I'm not by nature a content person. Mm-hmm. You know, there's always there's another guy in here talking in my head. And, I have a history of violence, and like that movie, there's still that wrapping around in my head. That was as close to whatever nirvana is as you can get. Eating cheeseburgers at 4:30 in the morning in the lobby of the hotel with all of our boys, my wife and, our daughter-in-law and our grandson. That was, for me, as good as it can possibly get. I thought the Super Bowl was great. I thought the Hall of Fame was great. Watching your son win a Super Bowl by 10 eclipsed that.
That's not even close to the receipts of Broken Arrow from the opening weekend or anything like that?
My wife doesn't know, but I still do get residual sneaker money. Don't tell her. She doesn't watch the show, I don't think. But
how much? What is your residual? What's the last residual check you got from Broken Arrow?
I think probably like $300.
Damn.
It's good sneaker money.
That's...
that kind of money, I made 38 grand my rookie year in the NFL.
Yeah.
I'm driving a used Coupe de Ville. That $383.
Awesome.
Oh.
I just got my last residual check from the episode of CSI Miami in which I played an announcer. $2.33.
I forget what the show was I did. It was Malcolm in the... I don't know what it was. Some show I did in the 80s for just a walk-on cameo, and I got a $2 residual check.
Those are the best.
And young Howie said, could you just call them up and tell them...
Save it. Howie, you are the best. You are the best. Say hi to your whole
Good
family.
Seeing you.
Got it. That's Howie Long.
Thanks for having me.
You anytime, please.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
If you like that, please download our app. There's lots of fun things there other than just more of the videos you just saw. You can call us from the app. You can email us from the app. Just download it. Trust me, you'll enjoy it.